Hello there, and welcome to Preprints in Motion, the podcast taking a deep dive in the fast-paced world of preprints.
Join us as we sit down with early career researchers, discuss their latest preprint, and find out about their journey through the muddy marshes of academia.
Hit that subscribe button, leave a rating, and find us on Twitter @MotionPod. Support us by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/preprints. But for now, let's get into the show.
It's Open Access Week, and to celebrate, we have review comments on to talk all things preprint peer review. I guess to start with, we should maybe have some brief introductions. So if you could both introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hello, I'm Sara Monaco, and I'm the managing editor of Review Commons. So something about me, I am originally from Italy, as you might hear, and I studied in Naples, my hometown, and then I moved to Heidelberg for my postdoc. So before joining EMBO, I was a scientist. I was doing my research in the field of cellular and molecular biology, immunology, and stem cells. And since 4 years, I have joined EMBO, and I have been always involved with Review Commons. So I was actually like the first dedicated editor to Review Commons, and it has been just a great experience to work at this very exciting project so far. And I'm looking forward to tell you more about it.
Cool. Well, I guess it's my turn. I am Thomas Lemberger. I'm currently the deputy head of scientific publications at EMBO and the head of open science implementation. And my background is really hardcore molecular biology. I started to work at EMBO as a scientific editor at the EMBO journal, and then I launched the journal Molecular Systems Biology, which was our first open access journal at EMBO and one of the very first after PLOS Biology in general in the life sciences. I was for a long time chief editor of this journal, and now I'm more concerned with finding ways to implement the practice of open science in the publication or next to the publication process, including, of course, preprint. And I'm in charge of the development of Review Commons, which is a super exciting project because it's really at the interface between new policies to really foster the practice of open science and disseminate scientific knowledge in a very open way. Scientific publishing, we work hand in hand with scientific journals. And then technology. There are many technological challenges in a project like Review Commons. And it is also an opportunity to develop new technologies to mine the scientific literature and also to mine the peer review process. So we're sort of, it's a very exciting time to be now in scientific publishing in this area.
It definitely is. So could you introduce what Review Commons actually is for everyone?
Yes. So, Review Commons is a project. It's like a platform that basically offers peer review of preprint. So we partnered with 17 journals at the beginning. We have a consortium of journals in Review Commons. And after offering this peer review of preprint, we streamlined the publication of our reviewed preprint on these journals. So the aim of the entire Review Commons project is to, first of all, offer like a faster dissemination of peer-reviewed research in form of reviewed preprints, but also to avoid multiple rounds of peer review. So, I mean, with Review Commons, we also want to somehow contribute to make the publishing system a little bit more efficient. So in Review Commons, we articulate the peer review in a so-called journal agnostic way, meaning that our reviewers are asked to comment on the science in a manuscript without having in mind any specific journal standard. So we somehow, in this way, decouple like the scientific evaluation of a study from like the editorial assessment that it's done at a journal. And in this way, thanks to this journal agnostic peer review, our reviews can be used multiple times by the different journals of our consortium.
Which is kind of what we want peer review to be, really.
Yeah.
So before we get into how it all really works, where did Review Commons start? Where did the idea come from? How did it all come about?
Well, as many of these projects, it is hard to pinpoint an exact starting point. And I think it's really important to see that Review Commons sort of came in this space after several other platforms were started and already existed. And one of those is the platform called Axios. And there were others, Peerage of Science and some others that were already doing preprint peer review and journal agnostic review with more or less success. And so the concept of peer reviewing preprint was not completely novel. And I think we just came at the right time with the right combination of ingredients to make it work. There was a turning point at one of the workshops organized by Azabayo in 2018, where Ron Vale really sort of crystallized the idea that we should add in-depth peer review to preprints to save a lot of work to the journals and make the journal-based publication process much more efficient, and at the same time have total transparency of the peer review process and release the peer-reviewed research publicly immediately. So at the time he called that peer feedback, and that was really the concept behind Review Commons. He proposed that at Azabayo 2018. I think the reception by traditional publishers was kind of lukewarm. It was not jumping of enthusiasm, but there was one group that jumped right away, and it was EMBO. And Maria Leptin at the time was the director, and she stood up and said, "We are going to do that. We are ready to do it." They met a little bit later. And managed to organize some funding, and Azabayo had some funding to start this project. And this is where we really started to draw, boards and workflows and brainstorm, and it was quite an elaborate process to find the right balance of features to make it work, and also to find the role of the journals without losing this focus on preprint and transparency in the peer review process. And the second turning point was sometime in 2019, I think. I don't remember so exactly, when we started the discussion with PLOS and with eLife. And that was really decisive to have an initial core of like-minded publishers who really wanted to make that happen. And then we were joined by Rockefeller University Press, by the Company of Biologists that has been super supportive. And from that moment, we had this sort of critical mass to launch a project that had some impact, that was very clear in terms of the mission with regard to open science, preprint, posting the reviews, but that was also formally organized to be connected with traditional journals. And I think that was sort of the key of the success, to have these two components nicely connected to each other.
The timing's really interesting, because when we had a chat with Richard and John from bioRxiv, the thing that they really sort of highlighted was the fact that it was just brilliant timing. The timing was right for preprints at the time to kind of really take off.
It's true, and as many of these projects, it is very hard to know when the timing is right. Actually, it's even true for preprint. Maybe you're probably too young to remember Nature Proceedings, and it was a preprint platform from Nature. And it was to host posters. Okay, it was not so articulated about preprint, but it was essentially a preprint platform, and it was shut down. It was not so successful, and shortly after bioRxiv was launched, and it was massive success as we know it. So I think these things, one has to be open, try it, see if it sticks, but maybe not be completely discouraged if it doesn't stick yet, and start in slightly different conditions later.
Yeah, absolutely. I also love that Ron Vale is at the beginnings of all of these things. He's just everywhere. Um, so let's say I have a preprint and I've uploaded it to the preprint server. What would the next step be for me as an author to get it nicely reviewed through your platform?
So, I mean, in Review Commons, you have to, first of all, to submit your preprint. So this is like author trigger. The author have to make the first step. So on our website, there is our submission page. You submit your preprint, and then it enters, our system. So we do have like an initial editorial selection at Review Commons. So we read the articles. We consult with our academic advisory board, which is composed by young group leaders and professors that are involved with our platform, and the manuscript that pass this selection, which I have to say are a lot. They are around 80% of our submissions. They undergo this journal agnostic peer review. So usually, 3 reviewers evaluate the study, and when we receive the reviews, we send them back to the authors. And again, the authors have to make their own decisions. So the first thing that they can do is they have the possibility to post their reviews together with their responses to the reviewers on bioRxiv and medRxiv, along with their original preprint, to have their reviewed preprint, which is already like the first outcome of Review Commons, which is independent from publication. And the authors can also stop here if they want. But if they do want to publish on a journal, we give them the possibility to transfer this reviewed preprint to one of our journals. An important point of Review Commons is that if the first journal rejects this manuscript, the author can just go to the next journal using the same set of reviews. So the paper is not re-reviewed. And this is the way we avoid multiple rounds of peer review, thanks to the journal agnostic peer review. So then the submission at the journal is curated by the journal itself, that makes its own decision, and also curate the revisions. And finally, the authors can also publish their paper in one of these journals. So with Review Commons, you basically have 2 different outcomes that are independent from each other, which are the reviewed preprint on one side and the published article on the other side.
So I don't know about everyone else, but I find academics are notoriously difficult to bring together and agree on a single thing. But one thing academics do agree on is that peer review, and the multiple rounds of peer review in particular, is ridiculous, and it's not. And I'm asking this slightly cheekily because I know the answer. But a lot of publishers at the moment are trying to pretend like they charge so much money because they do this excellent peer review service. So how much money are you guys all charging?
Well, at the moment, we don't charge anything. Everything is for free for everybody, which is, the usual expectation in scientific publishing is that things happen by magic for free. Now, of course, the reality is a little bit different. We have a team here at Review Commons, Sarah. We have a second scientific editor, Ruby, myself. We have the entire EMBO Press team that contributes to Review Commons. These are 15 editors. To run this machinery, we need a little bit of infrastructure, but most of the costs are really, the salary to run it and to do the peer review. So this costs money, and we will have to transition to a system where we are self-sustained and find a financial model that cover the cost. Of course, the cost of the reviewers, is also one of these illusions. It seems to be all for free. In fact, it's not for free at all. All these reviewers spend 5, 6, even more hours per manuscript to read it and make a very detailed analysis. This is time that is taken on their job, on their salary. It's often an activity that is not listed on their job description, but it should. And if this activity would be listed on their job description, that would be accounted in the cost and the salary of these reviewers. So what I try to say is that to operate a system of publishing that that relies on in-depth, high-quality review, there is no miracle, absolutely no miracle. There is a need of people driving the engine and putting pressure on reviewers that they return their reviews, putting pressure on researchers to convince them to review in the first place. It's actually very difficult to find enough reviewers these days, and this is true for Review Commons. It's true for our classical journals as well, and we can discuss maybe later what are the potential causes. But so publishing is a high energy enterprise, and things do not happen so spontaneously, and one has to inject energy. And if you inject energy, it means people who are active, and this means cost in terms of salary. The technology and the infrastructure is not very expensive. We need to pay for an editorial system and these kind of things. Of course, these are real costs. As a pure peer review platform, Review Commons, we have this sort of advantage, if you want, that we don't have to sustain a publishing infrastructure, a website, and production and PubMed posting. This may change in the future, and for the moment, this is not a cost for us, but it's of course a cost on the side of the journals.
It's interesting because cost is one of those things that's being talked about a lot at the moment from a lot of different angles. And researchers seem quite happy just to pay the money up for the journal thing. But when you switch it around and say you're paying for peer review, like what Eli have done, for example, suddenly everyone's all up in arms and are complaining about the whole thing. And it's a really weird, because there's nothing really changed. It's just it's just thought processes that's meant to be switching.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of a broader and complex discussion, of course, on what is the value added by peer review, by publishing, by selecting, by formatting, by production, and what is the price that people are ready to attach to this value, and what is the cost, and whether it is possible to run that in a sustainable way. It's a very complex debate because there are many variables that are linked to each other. The quality, of course, of the selection, the quality of the peer review, but also the function of publishing. What is the function of journals? What is the function of preprint? And how does this link, of course, to research assessment and to the progression of individuals? So it's a very complex equation where it's almost systems biology. You have to almost have an AI model that sort of doesn't explain anything, but at least it can bind hundreds of different variables together.
I think before joining ASAP Bio, I vastly underestimated the infrastructure behind all of the things that go on. Because that's the thing, as any academic is not really ever exposed to it all. You submit your paper on your the editorial system. It's not great mostly, but that's all you see. And there's this huge infrastructure behind all of it. And I never thought about it until now. I have to think about it a lot. But it's amazing.
Yeah, it is true. It is true. When you press the submit button, there's kind of an army of minions and things that are happening, for the best or for the worst.
So you've already said that you do an initial sort of triage and a bit of screening. What would lead to a preprint not being sent for review?
Yeah, so it's true. We do a triage, as Sarah mentioned. We send a substantial amount of papers out, 80%. We have a small team, so we don't have the bandwidth to guarantee that we're going to peer review any submission 100%. So we kept, by principle, a triage step. Now, the first criterion is very easy. It is that we peer review only research articles. We don't peer review commentaries, perspectives, reviews, and stuff like this. It has also to be within the scope. So Review Commons actually have a scope, which is more or less the union of the scope of the journals, but it's a little bit more restricted than that. So journals like Key Life or PLOS ONE have very broad scope that include potentially things that we would not feel comfortable reviewing. Anything that is clinical, epidemiology, far-reaching evolution could be slightly problematic. These kind of topics, we return the papers because we do not feel we would do a good job identifying experts. And also, especially for the clinical fields, the nature of the peer review is very different from basic research, and we are very mindful of that. So we would prefer to associate with medical journals to do that than trying to improvise ourselves. Now, an obvious criterion is that there should be a high likelihood, or reasonable likelihood, I should say, not high, but reasonable likelihood to be able to convince reviewers to review the paper. And that is not always the case. It's sort of linked again to the scope and to our network of reviewers. And then it's linked really to whether a study finally represents sufficient advance such that the reviews that will be public, that's the function of review commons, is to make these reviews public. And so we want that these public reviews, they serve, of course, the authors to improve their paper, but they should serve a broader audience than just the authors. And that's the meaning of the public reviews. Really, we hope that these reviews can also be useful for a broader audience that is interested in this paper. And that is linked, it's not completely dependent, but it's linked to the advance of the paper. A paper that is very incremental, very specialized, with a very small community, if at all, of potentially interested readers. It's unlikely that the reviews, when published and posted publicly, will be of interest beyond the sole authors. And so that is a criteria. It's a gray area. Of course, there is not yet an AI algorithm that would do that for us. But we consult with our advisory board and we ask these different questions. How likely is it that your colleagues will review what is kind of the advance in your own field, etc., to make a judgment call. And the result is that we send out 80%, not 100%, but 80% of the papers.
I guess talking about reviewers, as you said, everyone is kind of struggling at the moment to find reviewers, and a lot of people just don't want to do it at the moment for various reasons. How do you find your reviewers? And do you feel that your reviewer pool is more diverse than a traditional journal publisher might use?
Well, I can provide a comment and maybe I'll let Sarah follow up. Starting with your last question, do we feel that the pool is more diverse? We have measured that. So we look at the number of unique reviewers per average paper. So we divide the number of unique reviewers by the total volume of submissions, and we compare that with Review Commons, with Life Science Alliance, with our other journals. And indeed, the pool, the diversity of reviewers is higher at Review Commons. This has multiple potential causes. This is speculation. We don't know. We have to invite a lot of potential reviewers to secure 3 reviewers, similar to journals like Embo Molecular Medicine or Life Science Alliance, which is sort of linked to the scope, to the breadth of the scope, to the level of the paper, the interest of the reviewers doing the job, and also the visibility of the platform. It's still a relatively young platform as compared to well-established journals. And maybe Sarah, you can explain a bit how we identify reviewers from the manuscripts.
Yeah, to answer this question should clarify who is handling the peer review at Review Commons. So it's like the Review Commons team, so the editors of Review Commons, and we are like 3, me, Ruby, and Thomas. But we also can count on the collaboration of the editors of the Embo Press group. So basically, especially when we started, it was extremely important for us because we were like a young, small team with like a big volume of papers to handle in all possible disciplines. And the expertise of the editors of Embo Press really helped us at the beginning to immediately offer high quality peer review, because they have on one side like the experience and the network in a specific field, and they also had like the credibility of the Embo. And Embo is very well perceived by the scientific community. So, I mean, an Embo editor inviting like a peer reviewer has like more chances to, get like a positive response compared to, Sarah Monaco that just comes out from the lab. So this helped us a lot. And it is still like that. So now the peer review is done more and more by the core Review Commons team. But counting on the Embo network was really important for us. And how we select reviewers, I mean, with very scientific criteria. We try to like identify the people that are more expert in the field. We try to have a balance between more senior people, like younger people. Like we are trying more and more to engage with the early career researchers and also postdocs. And this is not like universally well perceived, the fact that younger scientists might join the reviewers pool, but actually we think that can also offer like a lot of advantages. So we are trying to recruit more and more young people.
That was going to be sort of the follow-up question. One of the things I see most frequently offered as a solution to the issue of finding reviewers is just to open it up to postdocs and ask them to do it. And as an example, when I was a postdoc, I did a lot of peer review for some reason. Don't know why I kept getting asked to do it. Probably because I couldn't find anyone else. And my reviews, the first few you do, terrifying because nobody showed me how to do it. I had no idea what I was doing. But when you compare them to the other reviews, because I only generally review for where you can actually, the reviews are open and transparent. They were always on par, I think. So that was reassuring for me. But also, postdocs are experts, so it's nice that you can pick them up and use them.
Yeah.
And they like doing it. It's a nice thing to say, review the paper.
I mean, you learn a lot about science while you are really, going deep into it.
Yeah. We also spend a lot more time on it because we're terrified. I want to make sure it's good.
Well, if I can add just a remark about that, I think it's true that to engage the younger community is super important. And maybe it's slightly easier now because we have all this volume of transparent review. You know that Embo Press is publishing the reviews since now more than 10 years. We have, of course, this body of reviewed preprint. So it's fairly easy now to find papers with example of peer review and learn from that and look how it's done. I think from the point of view of a journal editor, since I was so long a journal editor, on the other side, if you want, it is very important to have a balance of expertise. So we try to find the reviewers that cover the different aspects of the paper, and then a balance of seniority. There is something that comes with seniority, maybe some more distance and sort of appreciation of the difficulties of projects that do not always work. And senior people, they have this talent and this experience also to chunk a piece of work and go to the essential. With younger postdocs, there is more tendency to go really into detail and to be actually sometimes, you probably not, but sometimes a bit harsh, with in mind that peer review, everything has to be correct and match and be corrected and no mistakes. And so we are quite keen to have a balance between these different points of view, which are super complementary. And just to finish, also we see a great potential of postdocs and maybe potentially some new forms of peer review. We call that technical peer review, where a paper is really evaluated in depth for the quality of the experiments, the quality of the demonstration, the description of the methods, the accuracy of the statistics, and so on. And apply to preprint that would have an enormous potential and potentially indicate a future road of peer review, where there is technical peer review for the masses and for preprint, and then we are ready to post that and to use this type of research right away, because you know that it's solid, it has been well done. And then a peer review that is more like the journal peer review, or the peer review at highly selective journals that go more in depth and provide more insight into the advance, and potentially, very useful suggestion how to develop a study and so on. And it should not be a two-speed peer review, but different angle of the peer review process. And that is certainly something we try to think about a lot at EMBO.
Yeah, I was never good at the technical stuff. I couldn't care less about details. I'm more big picture stuff. That's where it's fun. And it's easier to pretend you know what you're talking about when it's big picture, because it's all just fluffy in the air clouds. So.
Yeah. Very good.
So, and this is the conversational nature of me not sticking to any of the questions. Why do you both do this? Why do you feel like this is an important thing philosophically to do? That doesn't come over in audio. That
okay. I can maybe start. So actually, when I applied for this job, so it was not very clear for me from the job ad what this thing was about. I applied for a job for a role that didn't exist before. But, I was a scientist, working in the lab. I had just published the main paper of my postdoc. And it was for me, I was coming from a very, very difficult experience, because, I had this big paper that was very interdisciplinary, and it was not easy to find a home for this paper. In the end, it was published very well in a very good journal, but it took me 3 years, and it took so long because I was going from journal to journal to journal, and always having, my paper re-reviewed. So even if I didn't know what Review Commons was, because it did not exist yet, just the concept of, this having a different way of publishing, that will allow to save a lot of time, because time is really crucial for the career of scientists. Scientists can really not afford to waste time. It's such a competitive business that you are out if you are not within some timelines. So it resonated with me really a lot. So when I actually, was lucky enough to, get hired to do this job, then I always had this in mind. I always had, in mind how it is, from the other side, from the author's point of view, and to just trying to offer a smoother and faster experience, which doesn't mean to take away the criticism, because this is the core of the peer review. This is why it is done. But still to bring a change in the way that things are traditionally done in publishing.
Yeah, why am I doing that? Sometimes I wonder. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of energy, but at the end of the day, I just love science, and without disseminating the knowledge that is obtained from the labs, there is just no science. So publishing is really fundamental to the advancement of science. Publishing in the broad sense. And so I'm really passionate about that. I was for 15 years editor of a journal. It was, an emerging field, systems biology, and it was really important to sort of get it right. What was systems biology? What sort of papers do you publish? Which one do you not publish? It was very, very exciting to be open to this totally new fields, totally new way of thinking. And so I think we do that at Review Commons, but also at EMBO Press, because we really want to have the best science being published very efficiently and accessible to the researchers. Now, what is the best science? We could discuss, up to tomorrow what it means. But that is really, I think, the motivation of many of us. We are we have, in terms of the job of being an editor or being involved in the peer review process in a professional way, it's a very exciting job. And I certainly encourage a lot of our, listener and young scientists who listen to that to think a little bit about. You are exposed to a breadth of science that is unbelievable. So you really discover, one paper after the other. It can be daunting. At the beginning, when I started my job at Embo Journal, I could not believe it. It would never stop. A day at night, weekend, Monday, Sunday, morning, afternoon, midnight, there would be submissions coming in all the time. And it was a bit of a shock, but then you're also exposed to all this research that is being done by people, and it is absolutely fascinating. It is also a fabulous but formidable challenge to tackle that at scale. The amount of research that is being output by the labs on the planet is staggering. How do we organize this knowledge? How do we make it useful? How do we make it better? I think this is really what drives me currently, with preprint, with review commons, with the journals. And of course, the elephant in the room is with AI, that is sort of now changing, or has the potential to change massively how we disseminate scientific knowledge. So that, I started with the podcast by saying it's a great, time to be in this area, and maybe even more now than even 10 years ago when I started.
And bringing it back to the authors, and there's a lot of things we're not going to ask because we did a webinar. I think we did a webinar last month, and we can link to that. So if people want all the standard questions you get, you can go and listen to that. So going back to the authors, do you have any feel for how the authors find review commons and whether they believe it's a better experience, for example, than submitting just straight up to a journal?
Yeah, so I have to say that talking to the authors, it seems that their experience has been extremely positive, and this is like a great satisfaction for us, actually. So I have like a lot of phone calls with our authors, because especially when the project started, people were like a little bit confused about the workflow, what to do, the next steps, and so on. So we offer like systematically after like the peer review to talk to me at that time, because I was alone. And a lot of others like took this option. So I had like the pleasure to really see and talk to a lot of people. And I have seen that, their experience has been like, generally very, very, very positive. And even if they were not like lucky with the reviews, so that sometimes, of course, they got like negative reviews, or they think that, the reviewers didn't get a part of their study and so on, they were still very supportive about the project. And this was like really, really nice to hear. And every time we go to conferences, not only like us, the Review Commons team, but the whole Embo Press team, we get very good feedback from the audience. So this might all look like a little bit anecdotal, but actually we ran a survey like last year on over 1,000 authors and reviewers of Review Commons, and we asked like series of questions, and the feedback was also in this case extremely positive. For example, we asked them whether they agree that our peer review should remain journal agnostic, which is one of the pillars of Review Commons, and the response was absolutely like in favor of the journal agnostic peer review. So they found it like constructive enough to like prepare the revisions, go to journals, be confident enough to make it public on the reviewed preprint. So also in this case, the feedback was really, really good. So overall, it's good.
And I think there was a survey done a year in with ASAP Bio as well, which is on our website, if people want to see some graphs as well, which reflects exactly the same points. So what advice would you give to other services who are coming up and want to offer preprint review? What have you learned in the few years that you have been doing this? What worked and what went horribly, horribly wrong?
don't launch a journal when there is a pandemic being launched at the same time.
You got to coordinate on these things.
Yeah. No, I think what we learned maybe is so we change progressively our policies almost every year to sort of go each step a little bit more transparent, a bit more towards posting the reviews and posting the preprint and enforce that slightly more than at launch. And at every step, we were quite anxious about making that step. The first step was to mandate the posting of a preprint, which was sort of, a no-brainer given the mission of Review Commons. But we wanted to start, and maybe that's also one of the key of the success. We started very open and non-dogmatic. So we were quite worried, if we now impose to post the preprint, maybe people are going to be really angry, and not at all. Nothing happened at all. And we had sort of similar experience in the past when we started with the transparent process at Embo Press. We had endless discussions whether we should do that or not. And I remember actually I was quite scared, I must admit. And at the end we did it, and it worked very well, and there was no pushback. And we also at the time left the authors, the reviewers, the possibility not to post the reviews and the authors to opt out. And nobody did. Nobody opted out ever. Or, it was 98% sort of, North Korean democracy type of scores. There was a vast unanimity that was a good thing to do. And I think that is a little bit of a meme in publishing, is that these steps that go towards more openness, towards more sharing, towards more transparency are very scary. It sort of opens the floodgate to whatever. And it's rare that it actually degenerates in a catastrophe. This is not to say that there are not concerns, and there are, disagreements, and there can be things that go less well than expected. But overall, over the all my years in experience, I have the impression that we are usually more scared than, or more concerned, not scared, but more concerned than absolutely necessary.
So, in the interest of time and needing to walk a dog who is currently going through my pockets, one final question. If you imagine an amazing world where someone crazy has come along, give me the power to just dole out whatever I want at any given time. If you could each choose one single thing to change about the current publishing system, and you could change it overnight without anyone going up in arms and burning things down, what would that one thing be and why?
Okay, so you are asking us if we have a dream.
If you have a, well, yeah.
If I have
yeah.
a dream. Yes. So I can start. I think, from my point of view, what I would wish to change is that, publishing system and what is considered like a scientific article will be like more diverse than what it is now. So that, to get out from this like binary system of published, not published, and to consider like different ways of, disseminating peer-reviewed science. And, in Review Commons, the very important thing is the reviewed preprint. And the reviewed preprint is basically a preprint that is accompanied by peer review. And also, like, the concept of peer review is like less traditional than expected, because usually we always assume that, a peer-reviewed study is an endorsed study, is an endorsed that has received like a yes or no. But, we can go like over this simplistic concept and just say, there is like an article, there is like the peer review that, is like a comment from like another scientist. And, the reader, who is another scientist, can like judge it himself, whether like the study is convincing or not. So we don't want to abolish journals, neither we want to abolish, the published papers. We think it is still important. but to offer like a different outcome that can be before publication or also, exist on its own, which is like a reviewed preprint. So what I will wish is that, the reviewed preprint will be more and more recognized by funders, by institutions, universities, and all these entities that actually decide for scientists' career.
It is really frustrating, I think, that we're still, as scientists, stuck in this era of print, and the only possible output is this traditional journal article, and nothing else can count. And yet there's so much more we could be doing, and we could be innovating, and we could actually be using the internet other than just as a PDF. And it's that frustrates me a lot. Anyway, sorry, Summer?
Yeah, well, the one thing is hard to find, but I wish we will be able to find solutions and technical solutions and policy solutions to have a shift away from quantity to quality. I think the amount of papers being written and published, the amount of new journals being launched is insane. And that is, I have a hard time to imagine that this is at the service of the advancement of science. So I hope that the interplay between preprints and journal will go in this direction, where individuals can have their research recognized in the form of preprint, in the form of reviewed preprint, like we already do that at EMBO, and we hope that more funders are going to follow. That individuals can be, especially the young individuals, can be recognized very fast and very efficiently and very equally with this mode of publication. At the same time, the role of the journal is very important in filtering, aggregating, coordinating, representing communities. And maybe one hope would be that we would publish much less papers, much fewer papers in journals, only the best one. That every lab internally is incentivized to only publish very few, but very excellent, the very best, not at the detriment of the individual scientists, but to publish them as collective achievement of the lab, and to have a little bit of a separation between recognizing individuals, and that's the dictatorship of the first author. It's important. Young scientists deserve the credit of all their effort. They totally deserve it. But now that's the obsession. And that we find mechanism that next to the recognition of the individuals for their career and of course for their own satisfaction, we find also a way to incentivize collective achievement and publish much less papers and have much less burden on the peer review community. Only probably a fraction of the papers that we send out actually really need in-depth peer review, public peer review that will serve, a broader community. The other papers, if it would not be linked to individual assessment, it would be probably totally fine to have technical peer review and a very fast and efficient process. So that's my wish, is that we find ways to acknowledge individuals, encourage collective achievement, and that we can sort of privilege quality over quantity in some bright future.
Yeah, I've been saying for a while we should do a lot less publishing and more focus on actual the quality that we publish. And also, there's too many journals. We don't need as many journals, and they just grow more every day.
Yeah, I just read this this report from Esposito. It doesn't make any sense. I think it's really a tumor.
So I think that's it. Thank you so much, both. We'll add links so people can get in touch and jump over to review comments, and hopefully, I suspect a lot of people who listen to this are early career researchers, so maybe we might add to your review pools a little bit.
Okay, cool.
How do I find out about the different bioarchive licenses? This CC, BY, CDXY nonsense is driving me nuts.
ASAP Bio have a resource for that.
Ugh, that's your answer for everything.
That's because they have everything you need to know about preprints.
Sure, they probably have the basics, like info on the preprint servers, but what else is there?
There's so much more. Looking to post a preprint but not sure what different journal policies are? They have a collection to help you out with that. There are meetings around preprints and associated services. If you want to know how preprint adoption has changed over time, there's even a page on that.
And COVID?
They have a big section on preprints and the pandemic, plus some really cool infographics for communicating preprints.
And university policies? Surely they don't have that.
They collect uni policies where possible.
Okay, they do sound pretty impressive, but is it not a bit of an echo chamber?
It can be, but ASAP Bio also engage with people who don't love preprints and have concerns. So we had an excellent discussion on this very topic a couple of months ago.
Oh, is there anything ASAP Bio don't do?
Honestly, no, they're so nice over there. They were so quick to jump in and support this show. It's your one-stop shop for info on preprints and open science initiatives, so head over to asapbio.org to learn more and subscribe to their newsletter for the latest in preprint news. If you want a deeper dive into the world of preprints, then look out for the next recruitment of ASAP Bio Fellows. And that's the show, folks. If you enjoyed listening, then hit that subscribe button to get the latest updates straight to wherever it is you're listening. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify or Apple and follow us on Twitter at MotionPod. You can find links to things we've just discussed on our website, preprintsandmotion.com. If you'd like to tell us what you think, then send an email, shout at us on Twitter, or shout at us if you see us walking down the street. This has been a JMJ production, generously supported by our friends at ASAP Bio. Until next time, have a good week.